Shalom, shalom again. We're talking about Parashat Toldot, the Torah portion. This is the second of two videos that covers this Torah portion, Parashat Toldot. In the first video, I discussed everything around the two sons of Jacob and Rebekah, and now we're going to jump into the history. The strife between Jacob and Esau represents the battle between good and evil, and it makes a fascinating read. Jacob and Esau struggled with each other even within Rebekah's womb, the height of sibling rivalry indeed. Their struggle forced Rebekah on her knees. "Why is this happening to me?" she inquired of Adonai, and her prayer was answered. The Lord, Adonai, told her that there are two nations within her womb, and that they will be two very different people. The younger will be stronger, Adonai said, and will dominate the older one. We too have our internal battles between our flesh and our spirit. I think it was Churchill who had the example about the two dogs fighting within each one of us. And which one is going to win the fight? It depends on which one you're feeding. Meaning that whether your mind dwells on your fleshly needs and aspirations, or whether you dwell on your spiritual man. And that determines who's going to win the battle in your life between the flesh and the spirit in you. Esau was born first of the twins, and he was red and very hairy. Jacob was born second, and he was holding on to Esau's heel, hence his name. Yaakov in Hebrew derived from akev, the Hebrew word meaning heel. Isaac and Rebekah's peaceful domestic life was over when they were born. Jacob and Esau really is a war between brothers. You can read, I'm referring to Genesis 25 verse 19 and onwards from there. In Israel, people on the street generally understand that the prophesied Gog and Magog war will be a war between two brothers, referring to either Isaac and Ishmael, or more properly between Jacob and Esau, and their descendants, of course. That means for modern Israelis a war with their Arab brothers. And the Arab nations include both Ishmael and Esau, as one of Esau's wives, as we discussed in the first video, were Ishmael's daughter, Mahalat. The battle between the brothers is an integral part of God's plan for all humanity. This war forces us to pick a side. I want to encourage you, please choose wisely. The sides do not only reflect Jacob and Esau on the direct, simple reading level, but it also sides between nations on the short level, and the sides that are either for Adonai, Yud Hey Vav Hey, or against him. You're either for God or against him. That is the choice. I expect that we will see the culmination of this multi-generational battle in our lifetime. I expect to see it in my expected lifetime. Esau won the initial race through the birth canal. Red and hairy, wild and rough defined and named him. To this very day, many revolutionaries around the world display his colors, red, to further their cause. But Esau didn't win by much. Jacob came immediately after him, holding on to his heel. Jacob's action named him. The Hebrew word for heel is akev. Yaakov, as Jacob is known in Hebrew, clearly carries this root of Akev in Yaakov. Akev also means bent or crooked like a banana. The implication is that the hill grabber is crooked in his personality, not straight nor honest in all his dealings. This characterized Jacob and Jacob's life until God changed his name to Israel. In contrast, Israel means straight. So if you are named after Jacob, do not despair. Just like God changed Jacob's name, he will also give every believer who enters into his kingdom a new name. And you can read confirmation of that in Revelation 2, verse 17. In the moments after their birth, during the naming ceremony, the next chapter of the struggle between the brothers was written. Akev is correctly written in Hebrew without a yod. In the Hebrew language, yod may be the smallest of all the letters, but it is the most important one. God spells his own name, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, with a yod. The names of Israel and Jerusalem and Yitzhak is Isaac in Hebrew, and Joseph and Yeshua all starts with a yod. It's a very desirable letter to have in your name. Esau in Hebrew means hairy. Esau in Hebrew is called Esaf, and it means hairy. His name means hairy. It should rightly be spelled Ein Shin Yod Vav. But one of two possibilities happened. Either Moses misspelled Jacob and Esau's names consistently when God dictated it to him on Mount Sinai, or alternatively, it was God himself who ensured that Moses spelled the names exactly like he dictated. And I believe the latter is the case. So what happened is Jacob stole Esau's yod in his name. Hence, the name of Esau that was spelled Ein Shin Yod Vav lost its yod, and the yod was added to Jacob's name, or Yaakov as he is known in Hebrew, spelled Yod Ein Kuf Bet. Normally, the name Yaakov would not have a yod in the beginning, but as his name is Yaakov, it clearly starts with a yod, and as I said, Esau's name is missing a yod. So Yaakov stole Esau's yod from his name. So the second round was won by Jacob. But jokes aside, moving the yod from Esau to Yaakov signifies God's choosing of Jacob, through whom he will fulfill his covenant with Abraham, as confirmed with Isaac and bestowed upon Jacob. He is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He is the God of Israel. Note that God's grace and election of people does not follow their action, but it precedes it. And the naming of Jacob to Yaakov illustrates that perfectly. Salvation precedes works. Salvation is based on undeserved mercy. The history of Jacob confirms this. Incidentally, the yod in Western names are hidden because of the use of the letter J. The letter J is the most recently addition to our alphabet. In fact, the first ever use of the letter J was in 1524 by Italian Gian Giorgio Tresino, who lived from 1478 to 1550. In is Trissino's epistle about the letters recently added to the Italian language. It can be argued that this additional letter, the letter J, was inspired by the enemy with specific intent to hide God's Yod for casual readers. Of course, for people like us who delve into the detail, it is immediately apparent. As the twins grew up, Jacob and Esau, their personalities were very different. Esau was a man's man, an outdoors man and a hunter, the apple of his father Isaac's eye. Jacob was a schlamazel, a mother's boy, his mother Rebekah's boy. He was homely and sedate. Their personalities probably set them apart. They must have played different games and had different sets of friends to play with. If they were happy players, then Esau probably was a forward, and Jacob was one of those daisies in the back line. But seriously though, on an eventful day, and that's the day where Esau traded his birthright for lentil soup, the Jewish sages say it could have been the day that Abraham died, but from the book of Jasher, Esau had a legitimate and physical spat over hunting grounds with Nimrod, in which Nimrod was killed in a hand-to-hand battle between the two. And Esau took the robes that God made for Adam, and you can read that in Genesis 3 verse 21, off Nimrod. I have to take a moment. This is a bit of a rabbit hole to go into, but it's fascinating. After Adam and Eve fell from grace and they wore fig leaves, Adonai realized that won't do, so he killed an animal to use the skin to clothe them. After Adam's death, the cloak that Adonai made for Adam was passed on first to Seth and then on through the generations, eventually to Noah. On the ark, it was stolen by Ham, who gave it to his son Canaan, who was an ancestor with Nimrod, and so Nimrod eventually inherited this cloak that was made by Adonai for Adam. And Nimrod put it on when he was 20 years old, and that cloak gave him exceptional strength and power, so that he became the first globalist world ruler by wearing this cloak. And Esau, after he killed Nimrod, he took the cloak of Adam off Nimrod. So after this battle, Esau arrived dead tired back home, and Jacob the master chef had a pot of red lentil soup on the boil. It smelled absolutely delicious, and Esau was famished. In a brief exchange, the seriousness of which was not realized by Esau at the time, he traded his birthright for the soup. In his utter exhaustion, Esau conceded to Adonai's answer to Rebekah's prayer in Genesis 25 verse 23. That's when she had her difficult pregnancy, and we spoke about it in the first video. This trade of birthright for lentil soup had eternal consequences. The birthright was so doing returned to its rightful owner, i.e. Jacob, and I'll justify that statement. The next major moment of inflection in the battle between the terrible twins came when Isaac was old and nearly blind and at the end of his life. That is Genesis 27 verse 1 to 45. Isaac wanted a last meal, and then he wanted to bless Esau. So he called Esau and asked for him to hunt antelope for him and cook for him. But under Rebekah's guidance, Isaac got tricked by Jacob. It must be said up front that whilst this event may seem unethical to human understanding, it really was the execution of God's will. And again I refer to Genesis 25 verse 23. Rebekah acted on God's answer to her prayer, and so doing she confirmed the sword-level spelling of both Jacob and Esau's name. Remember the stolen yacht. Rebekah prepared a lamb and dressed it as game for Jacob to present to Isaac. Rebekah also took Adam's garments from Esau's chambers to dress Jacob as his brother, and then she covered his hands. Note how the deceit is contrived by Rebekah, even though she later blames Jacob for it. She blames Jacob in Genesis 27 verse 45. The deceit seems unethical, but upon casual reading, but within the light explained above, you can see that it is God's will executed. Adonai's thoughts are higher than ours. I believe that there's a parallel between the history of the twins, Jacob and Esau, and the greater story, and I should say story in inverted commas, of Yeshua, or Mashiach, also known as Jesus Christ, and his battle with Satan. The enemy laid false claims to the kingdoms of the world. However, the whole world and all that dwells upon it rightfully belongs to the Lord. The day is fast approaching when Yeshua will take back what rightfully belongs to him. Back to Jacob and Esau. During the blessing, Isaac must have suspected the foul play, as is evident from his engaging of Jacob before blessing him, in spite of his intense anger immediately afterwards when he realized what Jacob and Rebekah did. But during the blessing engagement, Isaac asked the following things. He asked about the short time lapse between him asking for the meal and when the meal was served. He also asked about the sound of his son's voice. He asked about the touch of his hands and the smell of his clothes. So Jacob stole the blessing, but Isaac must have realized upon reflection that it was indeed God's will that had transpired. Later on, when Isaac was sending Jacob off to Laban, it is not only due to his wife's request to do so, but in my opinion, Isaac then understood how God facilitated the events that transpired. Hence, Isaac instructed Jacob not to marry a local girl, as Esau did, but to woo a nice girl from Padan Aram, where their family hails from. The blessing that is recorded in Genesis 27, verse 27 up to 29, is the continuation of the covenant Adonai concluded with Abraham. Isaac's blessing of Jacob is a continuation of what Adonai said to Rebekah when she had a difficult pregnancy as well. He told her in Genesis 25 verse 23 that there were two nations struggling with each other within her. He said that the firstborn will serve the younger brother. The blessing that Isaac spoke over Jacob contains the following. Jacob's smell is like the smell of a field that is blessed by God. God will bless your labor like dew on fertile soil, he said. Your work will yield great returns. Then he said, people and nations will serve you. They will be employed by you and you will lead them. And those people and nations who dare to curse you, they will be cursed by God and those who bless you will be blessed by Adonai. Isaac's blessing became solid. When last did you smell a field just after it rained? It remains one of the most wholesome smells in the world. Rain is a blessing from Adonai. The smell of nature testifies to his greatness and also to his love. In Psalm 45 verse 8, I read, all thy garments smell of myrrh and aloes and cassia, out of the ivory palaces where they have made thee glad. And also in the Song of Songs or Songs of Solomon, chapter 2 verse 13, the fig tree putteth forth her green figs, and the vines with the tender grape gives a good smell. Arise, my love, my fair one, and come away. The second part of the blessing is all of Jacob's labor will be blessed with great yields. Most certainly this is a farming yield that it refers to, and it has direct implication for agriculture, but it doesn't stop there. It's not without reason that there were so many Jewish businesses that are vibrant and profitable, and the reason for it roots back to Isaac's blessing of Jacob. The blessing is echoed by the prophets. In Isaiah 55 verse 13 we read, instead of the thorn bush the cypress will come up, and instead of the nettle the myrtle will come up, and it will be a memorial to the Lord for an everlasting sign which will not be cut off. And this prophecy has certainly been fulfilled in present-day Israel after 1948. When the people returned to the land blossomed to welcome the people. Next prophet is Joel chapter 2 verse 23. Be glad, people of Zion, rejoice in the Lord your God, for he has given you the autumn rains because he is faithful. He sent you abundant showers, both autumn and spring rains as before. And the third prophet who concurred or testifies that Isaac's blessing became the truth or became history is Hosea in chapter 10 verse 12. He writes, sow righteousness for yourselves, reap the fruit of unfailing love, and break up your unplowed ground, for it is time to seek the Lord until he comes and showers his righteousness on you. The third part of the blessing is that Jacob, who later was known as Israel, will lead the nations. And this is very clear from a quick read of historic Nobel Prize winners' names. It's the reason why modern Israel is also known as the startup nation, leading the world in technology. Isaiah 49 verse 6 wrote, the Lord said to me, I have a greater task for you, my servant. Not only will you restore to greatness the people of Israel who have survived, but I will also make you a light to the nations, so that all the world may be saved. That certainly refers to the nation of Israel, but it very specifically refers to Yeshua HaMashiach as well. Then in Genesis 22 verse 18 we read, and through your offspring all nations of the earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed me. Certainly Jacob's leadership, Israel's leadership to all the nations, but specifically referring to Yeshua HaMashiach, who you may know is Jesus Christ as well. And then thirdly, from the book of Acts of the Apostles, chapter 3 verse 25, and you are heirs of the prophets and of the covenant God made with your fathers. He said to Abraham, through your offspring all peoples on the earth will be blessed. So through the offspring of Abraham certainly includes Jacob, and it specifically refers to Yeshua HaMashiach as well. And then the last part of Isaac's blessing upon Jacob He repeats Adonai's promise to Abraham. Everybody who curses you will be cursed by God. And likewise, every person or nation who blesses Israel will be blessed by God himself. My advice to you is to choose wisely. Other cross-references and confirmation from the Bible. Firstly, from the book of Numbers, chapter 24, verse 9. He couches, he lies down as a lion, and as a lion, who dares rouse him? Blessed is everyone who blesses you, and cursed is everyone who curses you. Certainly refers to the nation of Israel, specifically also refers to Yeshua Mashiach. The second reference, Deuteronomy 30, verse 19. I call heaven and earth to witness against you today that I have set before you life and death, the blessing and the curse. So choose life in order that you may live, you and your descendants. And thirdly, Psalm 37, verse 22. For those blessed by him will inherit the land, but those cursed by him will be cut off. We read how Jacob deceived Isaac to be blessed, and then later Isaac confirmed his blessing so that there can be no doubt over who is blessed. And you can read this, compare Genesis 27, verse 27 to 29, with Genesis 28, verse 3 and 4. I hope that this motivated you to place your unconditional trust and faith in Adonai's plan for your life, like Rebecca and Isaac did, and like Jacob did. Adonai is true to his word. His promises are eternal. If you seek him, he will find you, and he will give you shalom. Shalom means that he'll make you complete, and he'll give you peace even in the midst of life's storm. Amen.